around?
Hi Rohit, how are you?
Good, good. How are you doing?
Very well. Can you guys hear me well?
Loud and clear.
Awesome.
So, as I said, the best is always at the last. Introducing Namit here. Namit works for Rakuten. Rakuten is a Tokyo headquartered global leader in e-commerce, fintech, mobile services. Nimit leads the product management for data science and AI and and other solutions at Rakuten. He's been working with startups for almost a decade, if I am not wrong, and
Sure.
taking them to growth stage from a very early stage by using data science, machine learning, and AI, and automation as a technology stack. Over to you, Namit.
Sure. Thank you so much, Rohit, and welcome everyone. I hope all of us are safe and sound, working from home, and yeah, these are unusual situations, right, and circumstances. But here is an opportunity for all of us, right, to still be live and be able to work with each other, right? So when Rohit reached out, right, he had a few ideas in mind that he suggested I can speak on. And one of the things that seemed very interesting was how can we really build an AI-driven innovation uh, environment, right? Whether within an organization or within the startup ecosystem, right? So I have had the wonderful opportunity, right, to be very closely involved with organizations of different size and scale, and have seen very up close and personal how different organizations are using AI and data science to create both a competitive advantage for themselves, but also to fast track several innovation opportunities. Right. So what are some of the things which help us do that? So one of the things which is extremely crucial, and I'm sure in the last several sessions you must have realized, is that the genesis of AI often starts with having access to the right kind of data sources, right? So, as an organization, if you are a very large organization fragmented across multiple uh, business units and services and products and so on, very soon you start seeing a fragmentation of data. And that often gets in the way of having rapid innovation and having the right kind of an AI uh, development environment, right? Since data is actually front and center of all of data science and AI. So that is the first part. The first problem that everyone should try to solve is to make sure that all kinds of data is democratically accessible to everyone within an organization so that they're free to innovate and free to create value, right? If you're not a large organization, right? If you look at the startup ecosystem, right? One of the problems that many startups struggle with is since your business is new, you don't really have any historical data to work with, right? And one thing that will be helpful, especially from an India innovation standpoint, is that if central bodies like NASCOM or anyone else can actually start building not just the India stack, but also create an environment where you can have a uh, data sharing or a data repository access which multiple startups should be able to access to. This is a very hard problem, because often we look at data as our uh, proprietary access. But from a startup ecosystem standpoint, if we can develop a system or a mechanism in place which actually enables a common data access for several small organizations, uh, that will be very helpful. It's a long shot, but it will be helpful as an AI ecosystem within India. The second thing, which is extremely valuable for an organization, is that once you have made access to data more open, more available for everyone, the natural next step is that are you giving everybody the right kind of environment required to do sciences, which means you have to have the right investments, you have to support them with the uh, compute resources and whatnot, right? So how are you really enabling folks to do sciences? Maybe you are giving your scientists easy access to Amazon Web Services or the Azure Cloud and stuff like that, right? So that can be extremely helpful. So it's not just enough to have data easily available. At the end of the day, most of the sciences needs dedicated compute uh, environments, right? And the third thing is that in order to build more of an organizational value system around AI, it's also helpful to train your engineering workforce or whoever uh, on on AI itself, right? So the sort of training is extremely valuable to make sure that as an organization you can succeed with AI. So these are some of the key aspects to keep in mind. If you are a startup, right, you're often focused on how do I monetize my AI solution, right? If I'm trying to create a object detection from videos, how do I monetize it? So I think from a startup standpoint, it helps more to be use case driven. So if you try to keep your innovation, your AI research projects more aligned with your end user use cases, you are likely to see more success uh, rather than having an open-ended research which is waiting for a problem statement, right? So that's something to keep in mind if you are a startup or a small organization trying to make an impact with AI, right? Um, One thing to keep in mind also is that if you look at most of the machine learning or data science problem, right? These problems are uh, often experimentation, right? Long running trial and error, which goes on for a fairly long period of time, right? So how do you create your system to be able to run over a period of time and iteratively improve, right? Most of the uh, AI problems are not like old school traditional engineering problems, right? Where you have the exact requirement, you implement it, you solve, and you move on, right? More often than not, AI problems are iterative in nature, which means that as an organization, you have to build an extremely agile mindset to make incremental impact and not really stop yourself from finding the north star. You have to make incremental impacts and keep moving forward and have a system in place which allows you to iteratively improve, right? So that's extremely valuable. And quite frankly, if you see most of the successful organizations, right, who have used AI at scale, they never started with the perfect solution, right? They had a 70% accurate solution. They launched it as a beta. However, they had the right mechanism to define what that 70% accuracy means for your users. So, say, for example, if you look at the auto suggest in Gmail, right? Or if you look at the recommendation systems for most of the e-commerce platforms, it never starts with being 100% accurate, right? But as you use it more and more, it keeps getting better and better. And that is the defining attribute of any AI system. It will not be 100% accurate to start with. It will probably be much lesser, but how you actually create a customer experience, right? Which even with a 70% accuracy is still meaningful, is still helpful, and you create an innovation system, right, within your organization where with every 1% improvement, you are making a meaningful, measurable impact of how your user's life is getting better. So keep that in mind. Don't worry too much about, hey, my system is not 100 percent accurate, so maybe it's no good. What you actually need to do is that whatever accuracy you have, who is it can help, and start there, right? So keep that in mind. The last thing which I would like to share is that so I actually started, long back as a machine learning scientist, right? And one of the things, if I look at, the early 2000s and such, right? A lot of the development which has happened in this space has happened because many people all over the world worked on the same problem, right? And they really worked with each other well. They were very driven to solve the problem, not just as individuals, but as the overall machine learning ecosystem, right? So the value of a good uh, collaboration is extremely important to solve some of the harder machine learning problems. So see who you can work with jointly, how you can actually uh, create a more shared success for some of these problems, whether it is within a single organization or it is working within the startup ecosystem, right? All of that, that can be extremely valuable. So I don't want to like keep it a monologue. Maybe you can ask me questions. I see one question from Pratiksha, and her question is, can what can be the first AI project a student can start with? Well, you can actually start with anything you find interesting, right? One thing which I'd like to really do is to replicate a system which has been built by someone else, right? So you actually learn how to implement an AI system. You understand the software, you understand algorithms, you learn how to implement a new algorithm, right? So it sort of helps you to get familiarized, see whether you can replicate someone else's success and learn alongside. That's a great way to start, right? After that, you can start expanding the scope. Maybe you can either look at improving an existing system, or you can look at a completely new problem, right? And see if you can solve this. So it helps to start replicating somebody else's success. There's no shame in that. uh, Anything that can help you learn and get better is always welcome, right? Okay, so there's another question on what's your advice to those future entrepreneurs. Well, if you ask me, every entrepreneur is unique. Every problem an entrepreneur is trying to solve is also unique in its own way. So my advice would be try to find a problem that is both valuable as well as you are really excited about solving it, right? It means a lot for you if you can solve that. And I think that way you will constantly be driven and motivated, right?
Hi, Nimit. Can I ask one or two questions that have come?
Sure, sure,
Yeah.
sure, Raj, go ahead, please.
I mean, for the beginners, I mean, people who've just started studying AI, what are the key things that you recommend it to them? The kind of projects that they should take. Should they be focusing more on internships, etc.? These are students largely listening to you
Right,
today. So what I mean, how did your journey started? Can are there learnings from
sure,
your journey which you could share in the sense of, because a lot of students over the last 48 hours have asked, is it good to do an internship even if it is non-paid to learn more about, because slowly but gradually industry is demanding a lot of practical exposure when you get into job, even from the freshers. How do they tackle this?
right, right, absolutely. So I can share my experience, and I think it's very similar to the experience of a lot of the folks I know. Uh, an internship is always valuable. So I started my ML experience from a completely academic internship. I did my internship long back in 2002, I guess, uh, under a professor who was a leading researcher in the field of neural networks, right? And 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 that really helped me understand uh, at an algorithmic level, right, what it means to build neural nets and support vector machines and so on and so forth, right? Now, not everyone may be interested in going for an academic internship, right? So some of the folks might want to do it more at an industry, right? So my suggestion is an internship gives you a flavor of how other people are solving AI problems, how other folks who are doing it well and doing it successfully, right, are actually solving it well. And you learn a lot from seeing somebody else's success, right? Uh, I don't think it matters a lot whether it is, you receive a stipend at the end of it or not. But my suggestion is every internship requires you to do some work, right? And if it is work, you should receive a wage at the end of it, right? It is probably not ethical to ask students to work for free. Uh, it is not. It is okay if that amount is less. Uh, that's fine, but it should not be zero. So I think if someone is asking you to work for free, I am not a big believer of that. So always go for an internship which has a stipend, because that also means that that organization values your work seriously, right? So your chances of learning something at a place which values that is a lot more. Also, I don't know any organization which expects interns to just work for free. I am not aware of that, and it should not happen.
No, no, there are many now.
Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend you to go
Yeah, yeah.
anywhere.
No, I absolutely
Yeah,
agree. Yeah. The other question that and it has come now also, is something on what kind of I mean, it says global certificate, but I'm assuming the person meant what kind of courses one should pick up, from a student perspective, that it helps them enhance their CV, landing up a job opportunity, etc. Are there two, three courses that you would have seen in last year or so, which you think
Right.
if anyone comes to you for an interview should have done, should know, etc.?
Right. So my approach for interviews, right, is less of certifications and more of skills, and it's the skills which matter, not the certification itself, right? However, uh, how do you develop certain skills, and what skills should you focus on, right? So, on that note, I would suggest that there's some really valuable courses on either uh, Coursera or Udemy, right? Some of the courses are even free, right? You can also go and do uh, some courses from MIT or Stanford and such, right? Where they've actually shared that it's open, anyone should be able to go and learn that. So I think focus a lot more on skills. I don't think for most of the AI uh, or serious AI jobs, it's the certification which matters. It's the skills which outweigh certification a lot more. That's one. The second part is focus on a few areas and do it well. So if you look at the field of data science and AI, right, it can be very broad. So say, for example, you can actually become an expert in, let's say, supervised learning for streaming data, right? You can master Spark. You can you can master something like TensorFlow and stuff like that. Select one thing and focus on that, because that is going to make you more skillful, and those skills can be easily transferred to a new problem, and that might work well.
And I'm kind of plugging myself in. Do you
Correct.
think hackathons are the way to enhance your skills live on industry problem statements, etc., etc.? Does that help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm a big believer in hands-on learning. So anything where you are building something real is actually a great way to learn.
Right. Yeah. There's one more. I mean, again, this question has been coming for last 48 hours. Do you think this whole AI, machine learning, this whole data science is also for the students who have not pursued technology as a course?
Right.
Can they now start up? How important is mathematics for them? I mean, in the past, whether they are good at mathematics, does that define how good will they be able
Right.
to learn AI or not?
Right.
Can the
So
non-techies learn AI? Is in
right.
a broader manner.
Yeah. And I think that's a fair question, right? And I think more and more, so you can actually segment the world of AI into three buckets, right? The first bucket is of an AI researchers. These are the folks who build new algorithms, right? Who actually are hands-on with the science and the maths of why neural networks works, right? They understand what are Hilbert spaces. They understand the maths behind a support vector machine, right? That is the bucket which expects deep expertise, right? The second bucket are the AI or the ML engineers. These are the folks who actually go and use AI software and AI frameworks and write software over and above that to integrate with larger engineering systems, right? Say, for example, if you are a large e-commerce organization and you want to build a new recommendation system which is running at scale and so on and so forth, you will need somebody who has an ML or a data engineering background who can actually do that, right? They may not be building algorithms themselves, but they will actually understand how to use it, what are the scale aspects of it, and so on. The last bucket are the AI practitioners who are familiar with using uh, data, Excel sheets, and whatnot, right? And would want to do advanced ML-based analysis, right? Who can slice and dice data and so on and so forth. Look at them as analysts, right? And my understanding is that every human being is able to do some sort of analysis and should be able to do that, right? So having an AI skill is actually very helpful. In fact, I don't have the link handy, but if you search on the internet, there's a new phrase now called Jupiter is the new Excel. So basically, a lot of analysis, right, is now moving out of Excel into a Jupyter notebook, and 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 if that is happening, then I think everyone should be familiar and able to do some basic AI driven analysis and such.
Again, one more question. I've also given it to you on the private chat. Are there books that some scientists would have written which you could recommend
Yeah,
that students should read? Are there any
right.
books or any other literature that they should be reading at an early age to get more hands-on learning, more hands-on
Yeah,
understanding of the subject?
sure. So my suggestion is if you look at a course on Coursera by Andrew Ng, right? And the name of the course is Machine Learning. That is a course I actually recommend to everyone. And it has some very useful references and even hands on sessions and such. I think it makes it fun. It is also a good learning experience. I think you will find some good references over there. In terms of specific books, right? Uh, it's a pretty wide uh, range, right? In the sense that you can have books ranging from the maths of neural networks to statistical learning and stuff like that, right? So I would suggest most of the softwares, if you look at, let's say, Spark, or if you look at TensorFlow, they have very good documentation and they have very good hands-on exercises. So if you start from there and work backwards, that might be a good way to learn. Sure. So one who is there's one last question which I can see. One who has just cleared masters and wants to go in AI research field, what steps should be taken? Well, my suggestion is if you're not already an expert in Spark and TensorFlow and such, start learning those skills. Uh, Feel free to start applying for some jobs which require data science skills, right? Which will help you become a better data scientist and be able to use those skills, right? Uh, that might be fun.
Are there more questions that have come?
Sure.
No.
The top best books you prefer or would recommend to for a
No.
teenager?
And Andrew NG.
Yeah. Andrew, I think.
Right. So So yeah, this is it. Thank you, Nimit, for your time on a on a weekend. Literally, I mean,
Yeah,
since the pandemic, every day has been looking like the weekend. I hope this gets over very soon now. Thank you for your time, and I kind of appreciate your help and talking to the audience today. Thank you so much.
absolutely. Thank you, Rohit, and have a safe weekend.